Mr. Daiell.
Okay, my name is Jeff Daiell. D as in David, A-I-E-L-L. I'm only one in the phone book. There will be 3 parties represented on the November 2010 Texas ballot, but only 2 paths will be represented. One path leads toward bigger, more powerful, more intrusive state government, a state government which will acquiesce in further expansion of the federal government and of local governments. The other path leads toward a state government that is smaller and less invasive of the lives and rights of its citizens, while resisting the growth of the federal government and requiring that local governments be more respectful of human rights. Now, it's true that this is the case every 2 years, but the massive increase in Washington's control over the American economy, combined with the federal government's continued willingness to ignore civil liberties and due process, make it more imperative than ever this November that every Texan possible be convinced to support taking that second path. We must persuade our fellow Texans to vote for decentralization, not just from the federal level to the state level, but also from the state level to our counties and cities, and from there to the private sector. Texas sovereignty must be respected, and Texas must respect the sovereignty of her individual citizens. The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution, which is our Texas Bill of Rights and Declaration of Sovereignty, have to be more than mere words on paper. They must become an integral and intrinsic part of our lives, part of our politics, words that we live by, not merely words on paper. We need to convince Texans to put some real teeth into the Texas Sunset Act, requiring that agencies be reviewed every 6 years instead of every 12. We need to eliminate agencies which abridge rather than protect the free market and civil liberties. And we need to reduce the scope of those agencies that the legislature will not agree to fully sunset. We need to convince Texans to move away from the near monopoly enjoyed by the government education bureaucracy, to provide tax relief for individuals who either send their children to non-governmental schools or contribute to the education of the children of others. We must convince Texans to support refocusing law enforcement strictly against crimes of violence, theft, and fraud, which will reduce the corruption that comes with prohibition-style statutes and also allow our law enforcement resources to concentrate more on protecting our citizens. We must win votes for an immigration policy that protects the Texas taxpayer while respecting the American dream of allowing individuals to seek a better life through honest work. I believe that my record shows that I am the candidate who can earn the most votes from the citizens of Texas for these goals and for the philosophy of liberty. That record includes not only my results in previous elections, but this year's campaign as well. I hope this evening to convince you of that also. If I do convince you, and if I convince the delegates to the Libertarian State Convention, I will remember every day between now and November 2nd the words of Robert Frost. I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Because I want Texans to be able to sleep comfortable in the knowledge that their rights will be respected, and that they will wake up each morning to a day that is better than the one before. Thank you very much. What Texans decide this November will determine the course of our state for years to come, perhaps permanently. It is not mere rhetoric to say that this election could determine how free Texans as individuals and Texas as a state will be in the future. And while Libertarians decide at our state convention in June will have a large impact on what the voters decide in November, we Libertarians are lucky. We have no contenders for our gubernatorial nomination in whom we could not take pride, none in whom the voters of Texas could not with confidence entrust their political future. We have the luxury of deciding which candidate for the nomination would best be able to convince the greatest number of our fellow citizens of the moral and the practical superiority of liberty over government dictate. That to vote Libertarian is to follow both one's heart and one's head, because voting Libertarian means doing not only what is best for yourself and your family, but also for all Texans as well. As I said earlier, I believe my record demonstrates that I would be that candidate. Many years ago, I ran for the Houston City Council. Before my campaign was over, the mayoral candidate of the Socialist Workers' Party had publicly advocated deregulation of Houston's taxicab market, an issue I had introduced. As Bob Smither, the honorary chair of my campaign, has stated, I campaign, and I campaign effectively. But experience in a local election is not enough, especially because city elections in Texas are nonpartisan. A candidate for governor must know how to run an active, effective statewide campaign, one that is conducted on a partisan basis because both the voters and the news media approach the candidates in partisan elections differently than they do candidates in city elections. I am proud of my record in that regard. In 1990, I set the record for both most votes and highest percentage by a Libertarian nominee for Texas governor. That was a year in which the race between the two Beltway Party candidates was considered too close to call, and in which they were, rightly or wrongly, considered to be very far apart ideologically. And those are both conditions in which Libertarian candidates usually find their support dwindling when voters actually go to the polls. My support didn't evaporate. It made an impact that commentators were still recalling years later. I ask for your support in making an even more profound impact this year. I believe I'm the candidate best able to make an impact that will not only have pundits remarking on it, but which will help to ensure that Texans live in a free society. If I receive your support, I pledge to you my every effort on behalf of liberty. Or to borrow a phrase that I will freely admit still fills me with awe, still makes me kind of choke up a little bit, I will pledge my honor, my fortune, I will pledge my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. Thank you very much.